Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to the channel. It is 6:15 a.m. East Coast time. It is May 26th, Tuesday. We're going to break down this slate for the Showdown a little bit differently. I'm going to do the full breakdown tomorrow, but I want to go at this from about a DFS strategy standpoint. Right over my shoulder, I have Fantasy Labs, a tool that I do use often, their contest dashboard, and it goes over some things that I want to kind of drive home the point, because when it comes to Thursday and this Thursday, there's a lot of things that we should be keeping in mind, not just what players should I fit into my lineups, which we'll go over kind of tomorrow, and seeing players that I like, their projections, their minutes, things like that. So make sure to check out that video. My first look video is already out, so make sure to check that out. But now I want to go over the DFS strategy side of it. If you know who Manny Laura is, he does this beautifully. He studies pros. He goes about different ways, thinking about different approaches to actually playing DFS, not just playing NBA players tonight, but actually playing DFS strategies, the fading, the contrarian approaches, whatever it might be. I want to go about that as best as we can for a Showdown slate and really just drive home and hit on some of the things that I've been already saying, but showing you exactly why I'm putting numbers to that, because these numbers are actually staggering at how you can just get an edge by doing very simple things. So we'll do that. If this is your first time to the channel, welcome to the channel. My name is Sal Vetri. I cover daily fantasy sports in all the major sports. We got golf as well, WNBA. I'll be breaking down those slates in the coming week. So pretty much a week. So thank you for being here. If you could hit the like button, whether you're here new or not, it really helps me out. And really, it helps me out to a very small extent, but it still helps me out. And also, if you're not here, or if you're new here and you have not subscribed already, and this video brings you any sort of value, or my first look one, or really anything that you've ever seen of mine, hitting subscribe really, really helps. That actually helps me out a ton, lets other people see me, not just you guys and girls watching this, but more people. Some of those might be advertisers, offer me some money, allows me to make this potentially a career at no expense to you guys. So thank you so much. Let's break down right into it. I guess the question that I'll ask for the day is, what do you think is your biggest edge when it comes to this Showdown slate on Thursday? I already know what mine is. I already have been preaching it for months now, since the NFL season, leaving money on the table. But what do you think is the biggest edge for you personally when it comes to this Thursday? You might tell me you're the best player in the world. Trust me, I have people coming in my DMs telling me that they're going to win the $1 million with no actual evidence or anything other than the fact that they have a hunch. A hunch gets you nowhere, but is that what your best edge is, your hunch? Let me know down in the comments right now. So what I want to do here is very simple. Look, there's other tools out there. There's Lineup Study with Fantasy Cruncher now. That's a very good tool as well, but this is just one that it's free. You can look through some of the other things on Fantasy Cruncher if you want. This is pretty much just checking out what the pros did, and it's through Fantasy Labs. Again, I don't have any sponsorship or ties with them. It's just something that I like to use quickly in the morning sometimes. So you can see every single player's exposures. You can see Awesemo right here. So this is for May 3rd, the Showdown slate, and we're just looking at a random one here. The Showdown slate between the Celtics and the Bucks. You can see Awesemo's exposures here to individual players. You have 89% Giannis for him. So compared to the field, who had 51% that day when Giannis was lower owned, and Giannis, I think, went off, he had almost double the field, right? As close as you can get without having 100%. Some other players in there too. He was over the weight on Jason Tatum, 70% Tatum to 26% the field. So this is good to look at, see where the players, see maybe why they were liking a guy, was he not as highly owned, and then you can start to get in that mindset. But that's not what I want to do here. That's something that is very important, though. That's what Lineup Study is all about. Manny Laura created the tool. It's now with Fantasy Cruncher. Make sure to check out Manny's podcast. It's incredible for DFS, 10 minutes a day. This is what I want to show you. Starting with this, there's about 3 things, and we'll start with the stack seekers. So a lot of the times people are going to make lineups, especially in Showdown slates, to try and leave money on the table. It's something that I preach. It's something that makes a lot of sense because you can get an edge. And we should start with that. Let's start with leaving money on the table. This is the salary distribution, and this is going to be powerful. For that night, and it's not just that night, this is pretty much every single night. It's the exact same graph. We can go to the May 5th game. We can go to games that were closer in date, the one that the Raptors just won the other day. But you can see here, so how much of the field is spending their entire $50,000? Well, about 38% of the field. Now, that might not seem like a lot, but that is a lot to not leave $100, $200 on the table. If you're part of that 38.3%, you're not winning anything. Let's just get that out there. You're not going to win anything if you leave $50,000 on the table, or at least anything worthwhile, worth playing, worth putting $25 into. It makes no sense then. You're going to be splitting it with, out of that 38.3%, if you have a chalk build, and there's so many ways you could actually build, especially on the Showdown slate when there's so many people going to be playing, 117,000 entries, you're going to be splitting it with easily a few hundred people. That's just how it is. So there's no upside there at all, in my opinion. How many people are leaving $100 on the table? 23.1%. Now this is where it starts to become interesting. So we pretty much have 61%, right? 38, 61.4%, 61.5%, whatever you want to call it, of the field leaving $100 or less. That's that's 3/5 of the field. Let's quickly go over to how many people are leaving 200. 13.3%. Now you're testing my math skills here, but I believe that's pretty much, we could sum it up to 75%. 3/4 of this entire field is leaving $200 or less. So when I tell you leaving money on the table gives you an edge, literally leaving $300 on the table on average will make sure that you have a unique lineup 25% of the time, which is pretty good, or at least a different lineup than the field 75% of the time is what I meant. So that's pretty good. But let's keep going. Let's keep going to see what I've been trying to say. 8.5%, so 9% of the time, people are leaving $300 or more. So that gets us up to right around 84% of the field is leaving $300 or more. If we go to $400 or more, you get another 5. So here's what it adds all up when you get all the decimals and things like that. So pretty much 95% or right around there of the field, and it's actually probably a little higher, is leaving $400 or more. This is what I've been preaching. Leave $700 optimally on the table if you want a shot at winning $1 million, like the whole entire thing, or only splitting it with 2 people. Because here's what's important: how much of the field left $500 or more on the table? Now, yes, this is just this individual slate, but we can look at slate on May 5th right after this, and we can compare it, and you'll see it's all right around the same ballpark. 3% of the entries left $500 or more on the table. That's it. 3% of the field. If you just leave $600 on the table, you're likely in the 1.5% of the field. Every single $100 that you leave, it cuts that number just a fraction of the percent. So when you get into the neighborhood of leaving 900, 1,000, especially on a slate like this, when there's so many people playing, I think it would be more optimal even to leave 1,200, 1,300 on the table if you can still build a good lineup. You're in a very small percentage. And when I say that all the time, people might just hear it and it goes on deaf ears because I always say it for the Showdown slates. But these are the numbers. 3% of the field. Let's go to May 5th, because this is like astonishing when you actually look at it and sit down and go, wow, knowing in your head now that you have data to back it up, that if I leave this $1,000 on the table, there's only going to be like 0.5% of the field doing this. So let's go to May 5th, a couple of days later. 3.4%. So I'm telling you, it's every single game, every single Showdown slate, this is how it is. The fact, 3.4%, that's so similar. 29% up here, that's different than the 38 that we saw earlier, leaving 100, but it's a different slate, so maybe they just realistically, nothing fit perfectly, but you see it gets made up for elsewhere. But still, 3.4% is leaving 90, or is leaving $500 or more on the table. That's pretty great. This is where we want to be, at least in my opinion, especially when there's $1 million prize on the line. If you're leaving anything less than, I'd say, anything less than 500, you're really setting yourself up for failure. Anything less than 300 or less, there's no way you could win the million. And by failure, I don't mean if you win and you split it with 200, 300, 400, 500 people and you take home $1,000 or $2,000, that's a failure. No, that's not. Somebody said that the other day in the live stream. We were trying to discuss what I meant, because they said, hey, Sal, if I put 20, 25 bucks in and I still take home $2,000 for first place, that's pretty good. Realistically, or in the end, the outcome, that's pretty good, right? Because you won. But if I told you going into it that you were going to put up $25 and you're in a 117,000 person tournament, and since you're not leaving money on the table, or since you're building your lineup a certain way, that your best option is to put $25 in a 117,000 person field, which is a lottery system, let's just be honest, and then you actually bank it and your upside is $2,000, you shouldn't be playing that contest. You should never be playing that contest, because one, you're not guaranteed to win. You're nowhere near that. You're guaranteed almost to lose. And when you finally do win with a lineup like you're making with $500 or less on the table, well, now you're splitting in so many ways. So was it really worth putting $25 in? You could have put $25 into every other contest on Draftkings and had a much better upside relative to the amount of money you were putting in. So that's the first point. The leave money on the table special that I always preach. This is why 3% of people are doing it in these Showdown slates in the NFL. At a maximum, 5% of people are doing it. But here's the thing. Now that you have even more people playing, you could be damn sure that out of those 117,000, that's probably not going to go up, because you're going to have way more casuals coming in. And tons of lineup optimizers aren't going to do that unless people set it to leave $1,000+ on the table. So my approach to this weekend, it's going to be leaving at least $1,000 on the table. If you're telling me that 3% is leaving 500 or more, and every single $100 more that's left on the table is kind of cutting that number in half, well, I'm going to get up to 1,000, 1,200, 1,500 even, if I could still have a good lineup on the board. We've seen that was knocked down or split for 3 $1,000 has split for three for 50 grand each. Leaving $700 has split 22,000 like 6 different ways a couple of days ago. So this has all happened in the past few weeks. You can still win big money on these showdown slates. It's just a matter of how you build your lineups. And the ones that I've seen winning a lot of money, at least on DraftKings, FanDuel is just a terrible site to play on for these showdown sites. It's that much more risky, that much more no way you're really going to bink it, having to choose these 3 different types of captain spots. At least there's a better upside. You win the $1 million, but they don't have that type of promo, the first place prize, but it's just very risky. So this is what I'm doing here. This pretty much tells me leave a lot of money on the table. Let's go over to another thing that I want to look at, which is duplicate lineups. It kind of goes in with this. So this is what I'm trying to say. So 223 people had this same lineup, and it might be hard to see here, but 223 people had this similar lineup, and it left $100 on the table. Well, no crap, you're leaving $100 on the table. This is what I'm trying to tell you. 95 people had this same lineup, and I could read it off because it's going to be small. So the second most popular lineup had 95 people having that same lineup. They left $200 on the table. And then you're going to just get a bunch of 80 people, 81, 86. All of these people had duplicate lineups, and they left no money on the table. You will not find a lineup really until you get really low onto this thing, and it doesn't even track it. It only goes up to 20 lineups, I believe. You're not going to find a lineup that has 1,000 or anywhere near they're duplicated. And if you do, it's going to be duplicated with 1 to 2 other people. That's how few people are doing it. You could be sitting in your chair right now going, okay, the success to winning is leaving money on the table. No, that's not the answer. The success to when you do win, if you have that money left on the table, not splitting it with other people, leaving money, that is the answer. So you're not just going to win if you leave 700, 800 on the table. You probably most likely are giving up a very good chalky play, but you're doing it at the expense of, okay, if this guy just doesn't go bananas, and it's a showdown 1-game slate, so it's very possible, especially in the NBA, first game of a series, people are going to overreact to certain pricing and certain players. If he just doesn't go bananas and this guy does instead, and it gives me $900 left over, I'm in a good spot. So that's just the way that I take advantage of it. So this is just another great tool to use just to see exactly what's happening when you leave a certain amount of money on the table, how many duplicates you're having. And I would actually love to see the salary ranges, the average. That would be a great feature. And that might be something to reach out to. Maybe Fantasy Cruncher actually has it, but maybe reach out to Fantasy Labs with, now that I'm thinking. It'd be a great tool to see the different salary ranges like we can do here. We can see these salary ranges, but be able to see the percentage of duplicate lineups. So when you have when you spend all your money that night, how many of these 38% of entries duplicated? Was it 5%? That'd be terrible, right? That'd be actually really cool to see. I might bring that up to them. I'll shoot them an email to their team and see if they can do anything. But now this is the Stack Seeker. So this is what we're going to start with. And this is something that I think is really important because you only need, realistically, since there's so many people playing in this Milli Maker, you only need one different guy. One different guy paired up with leaving money on the table. So what does that mean? So for this slate, for the NBA slate that we're about to play, this millionaire slate, it could be going down to a different type of point guard, going down to maybe a Marc Gasol off of a $7,000 player, and there's your $1,000 left on the table. You're not being you're not putting yourself at a disadvantage if you're still giving yourself a starter or a guy who's going to play 30 minutes. When you put yourself at a disadvantage is when you play a $2,000 bum player over a guy who's in the $3,400 range who's actually pretty good and he's going to be starting or seeing more minutes. Don't do that. Differentiate in a spot where their skill sets are pretty good. There's just a different reason for their skill or their pricing, whether it's recent play, somebody getting pushed into the starting lineup, whatever it might be. But what I want to show you here is just how often people actually build the same lineups. And it's going to happen when you have chalky builds or when you don't leave money on the table, of course. But let's just do this. So Giannis on this date was $10,200. You have to pick at least 2 players to see what the stack, how many people had that combination. So if you go Giannis and Kyrie here for this showdown slate, or this 2-game slate, I guess you can say it. If you go Giannis and Kyrie here, you're going to get 26% of the field having him. That is pretty low of a percentage for those 2 guys. Let's add in Mirotic, these are the 3 highest owned guys on the slate. 18% of the field has the 3 highest owned guys on the slate. That's still pretty good, right? And then the lower you go, the lower it gets. So this has it filtered now to the 2-game slate, which is fine. We were dealing with the 1-game slate earlier. This is now filtered to the 2-game slate, which is fine. We could still go with this. If you have, now pricing comes into effect. If you have these 4 guys from this same game, and they're the 4 most expensive guys from the game, so it makes it a little bit harder. But still, I mean, most expensive being you have a $6,000 guy, you have a $3,000 guy. Having those 4 guys is only 6% owned. and you still have 2 spots left if this was a showdown slate. So, like I said, once I went to the stack seeker, it filtered it back. You could filter it back to the showdown slates, the single entry or the single game things right here. But I have it filtered back now to that 2-game slate that was on that same night. So this is what you're looking at. I think it's very interesting. I think that for this showdown slate that we're about to get, there it goes, filters back. For this showdown slate that we're about to get on Thursday, this $1 million one, if I had to make a prediction, I would say that this 3% of entries number is probably closer to like a 5 or a 6, just because of the pure volume of people playing. It probably goes up with lineup optimizers purposely leaving money on the table. It probably goes up nowhere near 10 though. So you're automatically giving yourself a far advantage, or at least a much better opportunity to have a unique lineup as much as you can. And honestly, a unique lineup meaning that you're the only one with that lineup. I'm not sure how possible it is unless you're getting really out there with like $1,800 or whatever it is on the table, and maybe you're starting to become not optimal. But a unique lineup when there is $1 million to first place, if you're splitting it with 5 people, yeah, you take that. When you split it with 5 people, you get the top 5 prizes and then divide it up by 5. You're probably taking home like $250K. So that's pretty damn good. So I would consider for this showdown slate having a unique lineup, really just 10 people or less. If you split it with 10 people, you're taking home 120K, right? You're splitting it 10 different ways, the top 10 prizes. That's how it works. I'm not sure if anybody knew that, or obviously people know that, but if everybody knew that. So that's what I'm looking at. This was more of a strategy video. It was just broken down for the showdown slate, looking at the stack seekers, seeing percentage of players being chosen for the 1 or the 2-game slates, just to kind of show you, even when there's a lot of players in the pool, what kind of happens with ownership. And then just looking at the salary distribution, how many people are actually leaving money on the table in these types of formats in the NBA playoffs, looking at the amount of duplicate lineups that are being thrown out there, and then making decisions off of those. So again, the summary is, for these showdown slates, in the NFL, there's a lot of different ways. There's a lot of ways to be different. I kind of had strategy guides below. In the NBA, there's really just 2, or at least 2 ways to gain an edge, in my opinion. It's leaving money on the table, and that has now been proven right here, or it's entering 150 or maxing out the pool and being able to have 25 different combinations, or having 6 different combinations of 25, and you have 6 different captain options, and you can nail the captain option and then have a shot with those 25 lineups, compared to me, who's going to enter 3 contests this week with like 2 or 3 different captains, and then I have to get really lucky just to get the captain right, and get really lucky just to get the rest of the players right? I'm not going to win. I'm just not going to, especially when there's people in there entering 150, since it is $1 million to first, so there's a lot more priorities. So my best advice, and a lot of it is, if you piece together these videos, my first look yesterday, we talked about some ideas into what is going to be important for this series, figuring out who Kawhi will guard, figuring out how much time Marc Gasol will be on the court, Andre Iguodala being in, what that does, et cetera, et cetera. Piecing that together with the DFS side, it's so huge. And again, listen to Manny Laura, he's great with this stuff. The DFS strategy side, breaking down into the numbers, seeing what the pros, the professionals, trying to be like them, their mindset, and adjust your mindset to that, instead of just continuing to lose in DFS or continuing to be mediocre. Look at other people who are not being mediocre, not losing, they're actually winning, and try and follow their tendencies. Look at some just hard data like this to see exactly where you can find your edges, leaving money on the table, and then just also to reinforce it, the duplicate lineups that we looked at. If there's loads of lineups with the same exact types of players, or the same exact lineup being built, we just saw 225 lineups. If those 225, and there'll be way more of them, since it's going to be a milli maker, so there'll be like 3 or 4x that. So if that same lineup hit for first place in the milli maker, there'd be about 800 people splitting that. Now, I don't know what the top 800 prizes are when you add them all up on Draftkings. So the way that it works is, if 800 people tie, you take the top 800 prizes and you split it between those people. So 800, I don't even know what that is. Obviously, when $1 million is the first place prize, you're still going to get decent money. If you were to just split the $1 million up, you'd get $1,250. So I imagine if you split like the top 800 prizes up, you're going to get right around like $2,000, probably a little bit less, $1,800. That might sound good to you because you're only putting 25 in, or maybe you entered 4 lineups and you put 100 in. That might sound good to you, but it's not. Your odds of actually winning first are so small that when you do, you should not only be taking home $1,700. So that's why you should not be building chalky lineups. Avoid that by leaving money on the table. That is it. This is the strategy type of video for this showdown slate. I thought it'd be cool for a lot of people who are just going to be playing just because they see $1 million this week, maybe new to my channel. to check this out. And then tomorrow we'll do the breakdown. I'll have my projections on the screen. I'm going to be breaking into that later today in depth, trying to find some beat writer reports on whatever I can to sort of get an edge in those minutes projections, because I think that's going to be the biggest thing. Thank you guys. Thank you girls so much. My name's Sal. Best of luck tonight, everybody. Peace out, gang.